Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Genesis chapter 41, verses 14 through 24. And Joseph is getting ready to get out of prison. If you remember, the cupbearer to Pharaoh was in prison with Joseph. And the cupbearer had a dream, and Joseph was able to interpret that dream correctly. Cupbearer got out of jail, and then he forgot about Joseph, even though Joseph said, "Make sure you remember me when you come into the presence of Pharaoh, and please tell him that I'm not in here justly." Well, 2 years had passed, and then Pharaoh has had this terrible dream. It actually is going to have an effect on the entire nation of Egypt, and not even only the nation of Egypt, but all the nations around Egypt, because there's going to be some famine. There's going to be 7 really plentiful years, and then it's going to be followed by 7 years of blight and famine. And so let us now run into this story. So then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. They quickly got him out of there. When salvation comes, it oftentimes happens quickly. They say that baseball is the hurry up and wait sport, that you stand there and you wait and you wait and you wait for the ball to be hit. And then there's a lot of action really fast, and then you sit and you wait, pitch after pitch. And this is exactly what it is like when we are in trouble, when we are not doing well. It seems like we have to wait forever. But when salvation comes, when the problem gets fixed, it actually oftentimes happens rather quickly. The execution of the salvation or of the solution oftentimes already begins to alleviate the situation. And that's what's happening right here. Joseph has been waiting and waiting and waiting. And now that Pharaoh has heard about Joseph, he is quickly being brought out of the pit. And I think this is intentionally supposed to even make us think back to that first pit, the original pit that Joseph's brothers threw him in. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. Here you go. He's shaving himself because the Egyptians, they didn't like any hair at all. They wanted you to be completely no hair visible. They wanted to have you completely shaved. So this is a cleanliness issue. And then he changed his clothes. And this is again a harken back. If you remember when he was placed in that first pit by his brothers, what did he have on him? He had that coat of many colors. He had that important coat that his daddy gave him. And his brothers took it away from him and threw him in the pit. And now again he is getting a new set of clothes as he stands before the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. You can do it." Well, look at it's 3 times. You, you. But what does Joseph say? Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It is not in me." I know you think it's me, Pharaoh, but it's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. It's not me that interprets the dream. It's actually God. And God is the one that lets me understand what the dreams mean. This is an example for us to follow. Anything that you're good at, anything that you do well, please do not take credit for it. Please do not think that it is ultimately because of you. You've got to push the praise to the Lord. You've got to recognize that the knowledge that you have, the circumstances that you're in, every resource that you have access to that causes you to be able to be successful in whatever you're doing is ultimately from God. And it is a good example for us to follow, is to even publicly do that and recognize it's really not because of me. It is because the Lord has enabled me and empowered me to do it. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, in my dream I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass." Now, what's interesting is we're going to have this dream resaid. We've seen it once. We've got a pair of dreams, and now this dream is actually being repeated again. And anytime the biblical authors want to repeat things, anytime they are repeating things, it's almost like they're underlining it. Paper was not as plentiful as it was today. They would have had papyrus. They would have had, this would have been an extremely big thing for them to write things down. So if they're repeating the story, there's a reason for that, and because this is the hinge, this is this is kind of the center of the transformation. This dream right here is what gets Joseph into his final state of authority that will bring salvation to his brothers and to his families. And this is the dream that ultimately will bring his family to Egypt. So here's this underlining. So he says, "I saw 7 plump cows, attractive, came out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt." So he's never seen it. This is additional detail that wasn't in the original dream that we read as far as the detail given to us. "And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. And when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning." And again, that detail is not there. So these ugly cows, when they eat them, they still look as ugly and thin as usual. And as we will see, it's going to be the famine is what these 7 thin cows and the 7 withering ears of grain, that's what they're representing. And so the 7-year famine is going to be so great that you won't even know that you would have had these 7 good years before. Said, "Then he awoke, and I saw also in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears withered, thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me." Here again, here's almost a little foreshadowing of what will happen with Moses and another Pharaoh when Moses comes to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. He will be doing many signs, and the magicians will not be able to understand the signs. They will try to mimic the signs that Moses is doing, but then at one point they will not be able to do it. In fact, one of the magicians, Aaron, will throw down his staff and it will turn into a snake. And then Pharaoh's magicians will also throw down their staff and they will turn into a snake. But Aaron's snake actually swallows up the magicians, and then it returns back into a staff. And so God's power is greater than their power. And it's also interesting in the sense of that it is the snake that is eating up Pharaoh's staff and Pharaoh's snake. So again, you will see these magicians pop up again in the book of Exodus. And also remember that when Moses is composing this book, when he is putting Genesis down and collecting all of this material, that little encounter with the magicians of Egypt would have already happened as he's putting that together, perhaps on Mount Sinai or perhaps on their way, or maybe after the time that they left Mount Sinai. But during that time, putting together the first 5 books of the Bible that we have: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I hope that has been some sort of a help to you, and I will see you in the next video.